And at that time, we were also able to express our concerns about what our limitations are, and that specifically revolves around staffing and resources. At that time, they promised to circle back to us, but in the meantime, earlier this week on Tuesday, we did receive a call from the legislative representative from the mayor's office. And he wanted to advise us that all redlining and all negotiations on these bills had to be completed by November 21st. So
That doesn't sound like anybody getting back to anybody.
So we told them at that time that we were still uncertain as to whether or not we were going to be tasked with doing this particular, the study on the comparable worth analysis. That's in 515. And he said that he would get back to us because he was going to look into it. And he got back to us the same day and said that we would hear something by Friday, tomorrow, whether or not we were going to have to do that. So I wanted to, bring this to your attention. If it comes back tomorrow that the bill is going to kind of remain with the EEPC preparing the comparable worth analysis, then we have to have all redlining and negotiations completed by the 21st.
Joan, question. As I understand it, since I'm going to go vote, and I turn over and look at whether I'm voting yay or nay on the creation of a new entity that looks like we are, but different. Why are they going to pass? Why don't they have the ability to undertake to do this analysis as they get staffed into monies, because the chances of our getting monies doesn't make any sense? And why don't we wait until we see whether the voters throughout the state have determined to make this change and create this new entity where this can be pocketed as their undertaking?
So I don't work for city council, so
I don't either, but why don't we write a letter
We
that's
can-
similar to
we
that?
can ask.
I mean, we are not getting adequate funding. Until I'm blue in the face, I think it's been 4 years that I've been asking for labor economists, but maybe it's 5. And we really truly don't have the skill set to do what the city believes it needs to do. It's crazy. It looks good on paper, and on paper they'll have something, but it will be meaningless. And if they think it's necessary to create a duplicate entity, which is what this new group would be anyway, for racial equality, then put it there.
I don't think the other commissioners will weigh in. I don't think we should send a letter in that regard. And I've only been here a year, so I haven't been here as long as Commissioner Reese to have that historical knowledge, but I'm not entirely clear that our ability to have increased resources is impossible. I think that with the new commissioners that we've received from the city council in terms of appointments and with the relationships here and with the meeting we just had with the speaker, with the meetings that the executive team here has had with council from the city council and from the chairs of the 2 oversight committees, I think people are, beginning to understand our role and work more and the value of it. And it's reasonable to believe that, that as we continue to make the case, that additional resources may be forthcoming. However, not, empowering a different commission or giving a different commission things that may still reasonably fall within our purview is not the best strategy to secure future funding for us or even future relevancy. So I just think from a strategic point of view, from the point of view of it's mission critical for us. Notwithstanding what the voters may vote on next Tuesday, but the relevance, the mission of our commission, I think, still is within the area of what the comparable work for racial justice, some of those objectives are. So I think we don't want to send that.
I'm going to interrupt. I apologize for doing so, but I have been through several different cutbacks and budget cutbacks, which is what the city is going to undertake. And looking for additional funds, even if everybody thinks you're wonderful during that period of time, when it's just done by percentages, I think is something that I do not see it happening. And I don't see it happening because the mayor is gonna have, the money, for whatever reason, just isn't there. We had a windfall with federal funds. That windfall is over. And the tax drop in commercial real estate has not yet been felt, but will be. We'll have warnings from the state controller and warnings for this controller as well. The revenues are going to drop. That being said, we're going to be, and we're faced with other people with other demands, including the Department of Education, who's arguing that they have all these homeless children who are seeking asylum and need to fund them. So
I understand your point, the macroeconomic environment and the different cycles, but I understand that whilst there are some conversations of budget cuts and scarcity, on the other hand, there are conversations of people doubling down and creating new commissions, creating efforts around pay disparity, creating personnel around making New York City more equitable, post-pandemic recovery, and that monies will be found for things that are important to the city.
but those monies are gonna fund this new entity as opposed to giving it to us. That's my problem.
Well, I don't think it's a zero sum game in that regard. And it would definitely go to them if we completely abdicate our role in any future studies. So that definitely reassures and assures that it does not come to us. I just think we ought to give an opportunity for some of the newer folks here, for just the overall climate of the city and the new leadership of the city council, and the new mayoral administration to you know, determine for themselves how it is they want to proceed around some of these issues. And I don't think that you should just, singularly say it should be placed elsewhere. But again, that's just my opinion.
I hear you, but I would ask where we are with OMB because we have, I believe, are still looking at
And I think we will
decreased
have,
funding.
we'll have an update on that, I think, later on.
Right after this one.
Yeah.
So I just want to say that we were supposed to meet with Chair Williams this afternoon, and that was canceled. That they've offered 2 other dates for us. And I was hoping that the meeting with Chair Williams might give us the opportunity to present a staffing plan particularly for the comparable work analysis, and have her help us to achieve that. However, if we have the meeting, as the later it goes to have this meeting with her, the harder I think it's going to be to keep making that case. The 2 dates that were given were the 15th and the 21st.
When they say red line on the statute, is there some way that you can reduce the workload within this legislation?
Well, I was thinking that because this legislation changes our charter mandate and it provides for a constant analysis. There's no end date on this. It doesn't say, for 10 years or 5 years. It's that the EEPC will do this comparable work analysis. One of the things I was thinking is we need an end date on this. We can't is this something that we want to do forever as part of the EEPC's mandate?
When is the report due? Annually?
Yes,
And it is of the entire, the 350 plus employees?
yes, 1,000.
It's impossible.
Yes,
Can't be done.
yes. I mean, we certainly could not have a finished report. We can indicate progress, but for an office of 12 to 14 people to
Who
take on.
are not in control of the data. And let's get the data from other people, other workforces in a timely fashion in order to analyze it without having created a algorithm for analysis, which needs some input from DoIT.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other?
You have to rewrite the legislation. What you need to do within the legislation is you must include the data must be available by X date, 90 days before or 6 months before. DoIT has to do the algorithm by X date annually and update it annually within whatever the time frame is. It cannot only be relying on us to do it without getting the information received in a timely fashion. Or we're operating for failure. So Alden, okay, let's go forward and say we're gonna do it, but we can't do it by ourselves and we can't do it without having others who are responsible for implementing information to us by given dates.
No one here, we're not taking off the table the conversation that we need the resources, the funding and the personnel commensurate to executing the study. So I mean, we're still pushing for that. We're still pushing for the additional funding. And we're not talking about, I was even confused in terms of our budget. We're talking about even an additional $1 million, which is a rounding error for $104 billion budget. It's something that would really go a long way to help out our efforts. And we can always substitute the local law 13 study can always be a complement work study for the foreseeable future in terms of how we do the research, how we frame the research. We have some flexibility around that. I just don't think it's a good, given our mandate, given how we are concerned that over the years, many of our tasks or similar tasks are going to other entities. I don't think it's a good idea for us to even proactively encourage that. I could be.
But that's not what I'm saying.
But I think that,
Again, Commissioner Kanda,
I was gonna say, I feel the same way that Aldrin feels, but we should say yes. And then I agree with you that the parameters needs to be established at the time that we start. So you just say, yep, we're ready. This is the information we need. When do we need it by? Who's gonna help us? Who's gonna facilitate this for us? If I said yes, you cannot blame me for putting a plan to be able to complete information. But the no part, I'm not comfortable, but I'm 100% agreeing with your parameters, that when we put the proposal, we're not crazy. We know certain things are needed by certain
have to be
days.
fed.
Yeah,
And if we're not, even if you get the $1 million,
Yeah.
even if you get your personnel, without having the data in a timely fashion, you can't do it. So what the legislation must, if you're gonna mandate us as performing X, we are dependent on A giving Y and B giving Z. And the legislation has to encompass all of that. Otherwise, it fails on its face. And we're the ones that fail because we're not supplying the final report.
at what point is the legislative language going to be provided to us or tomorrow?
Tomorrow is when they said they would tell us whether or not the EEPC will have to do the comparable.
And then if the EPC is the one that has to do the comparable work analysis, what's the next step?
So we've already been anticipating, whether, we don't know if we're gonna get it or not, but I don't want to, just wait and find out. So, we have also on the agenda for today, an update through research about the work that they've been doing to try to come up with a framework for attacking this. And also on the agenda is the fact that we are starting to have conversations with DCAS to enter into a memorandum of understanding to get the data. So we have made a request for data to their attorney. We haven't heard anything back yet. He said he was going to draft an MOU. We're going to start prodding him to get moving.
have you shared that with the legislative person? Our intent to, all the plans that we have put in place to be sure that if they say that we have to do it, that we're working towards meeting that goal.
Yeah, we kind of mentioned it a little bit. I don't know if it's stuck with anybody, but we are hoping to have a methodology. And Russell will talk to you too about what New York State is doing. They've also started working on that. They've done a huge study where they came up with a survey, which they gave out to state employees. That's something that we can use as well as a guide. We're trying to find out as much information as we can.
So if we're moving in that direction, why don't we, before waiting for them to say if they want us to do it or not, And we have already started taking steps to ensure that if it happens, why don't we call them and say, no, we're gonna do this. Let me share with you where we are, what I'm doing, and how I'm planning to do.
So the last conversation I had, I said, we could do it, but we need the resources to do
Yeah.
it. And if you don't give me the resources, I can't do it because the local law 13 is already taking up most of the oxygen in the room.
I want
And
to,
legally without the ability
Commissioner
to
Reese,
even
please.
do
Commissioner
any
Reese.
sort of discussion.
Commissioner Reese, please, I'll say within order. I'd like to, for the record, we've been joined by Commissioner Yearwood and, welcome. No, we just really got started very early in the agenda. And I think you wanted to make a comment on this as well.
Yes, definitely. So I pulled up our budget and there's actually a clause in there where if the council asks us to do additional work, that we can get staff for it. So that's in our budget, which I got off of the council's website. So my thing is, a lot of times we say we don't have the capacity. When are we gonna outline to the council exactly what we need? So if they say they pass this law, okay, then we need 2 people to do this, we need 2 analysts, this is gonna cost X, Y, and Z. Because I don't like to necessarily come across as we can't do it without presenting the solution. So let's tell them exactly what we would need to get this accomplished. And like I said, I found the clause in the budget, and it looks like a lot of our budget is personnel services. So if, I would love to see more of a breakdown, so I can have a better understanding, or if this is just it, what they have on the council website, I would like that, to have that confirmed as well. But that is on page 2 of our budget. It says, if the commission increases its capacity or the city charter is changed, the budget would need to reflect those changes and be adjusted accordingly.
Thank you.
So that's on page 2. And this is from,
That's an incredibly critical piece of information. Contributed. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Definitely, punctuated echo to the sentiments that I know I had at the top of this conversation. Just about our
So
mandate
it's in
and
there.
our role.
they want us to do more, they said they're gonna give it to us.
Right,
That's in writing.
I know, but.
No, it's different. No, but I'm just saying it's big.
No, it's there, but between that and it happening or.
Now, I had to put my,
Glasses on.
my schedule hat and poking through the budget hat on. I was like, hey, this should be on the website.
Yeah, no.
And there it is.
And, that's why, another reason why we're so happy to be a full complement of commission. It brings their license. So,
The chair, the city council chair was quite sympathetic to there being unfunded mandates. And that we cannot continue to function with unfunded mandates, which local law 13 was. This budget is subsequent to local law 13.
Yeah, this
Local law
is, this is
13
budget.
comes in,
This is FY 2023, so
yeah,
that's.
that's last year,
But I
but
think
the local
what-
law 13 was the year before.
I think what
2 years
Commissioner,
ago.
yeah, but I think what Commissioner Gilwood is saying, right? So the city council, by and large, right, they do make their decisions, their legislators, they are in deep need of guidance. They are in deep need of information. They are in deep need of that data. And if we cannot provide them with the exact request, the exact asks with labor economists, salary amount, description, then there's nothing material that they can reference. There's nothing that there's not. And I think, I know it's my sentiment, I can't speak for no one else, but I think the EEPC, well, going forward, we need to be more deliberate in always having that letter followed up by another, followed up by a phone call, followed up by a personal visit, followed up by a subsequent conversation to a chief of staff, followed up to a conference, so legislative budget director, followed up, you know what I mean? Like that kind of intentionality and high touch. I'm not going to speak to the past, but that's something that going forward, absolutely need. And being newer to this, I just want to give that an opportunity. Next, we have the status Commissioner Reese?
Do we have any sense about what a labor economist would cost us?
I've been looking into that as well. There's actually a civil service list for economists. And when I read through the job spec for that, labor economist is one of the specialties under that title. There's a whole salary range for that. I was like looking at a level 2, there's three ranges of salaries. If we went with a different kind of title, that's not a civil service title, we'd probably be looking at around $100,000 a year for that person. But if you're getting someone off of the list, it's going to be substantially less.
Following the chair's statement, it seems to me we ought to have a piece of an addendum, a paragraph that says, for us to fulfill, even under local law 13, here are the following titles and the salary ranges we would need. And go, and so following which we do, there are increased mandates. If you're going to increase the mandate to us and ask us to do yet more labor, clearly we need these and perhaps others. But you want to have a paragraph that has within it the titles you would want and the ranges, so that you're comfortable with an economic request.
Yes, yes. I will have that.
And shared, whether that's in the form of rest in the letter or whatever, but then share that with the commissioners, because the commissioners all have their own relationships that they can work on to ensure that it's tackled.
Well, I wish to comment on that as well. I don't think any of one of us should be talking to anybody without telling the others who they're talking to, so that we're speaking with one voice. I don't want to, I made it very clear when I was calling Gail Brewer what I was calling her about, and what I was asking for. It was asking for the council to appoint additional members to this board. I really think that if we are talking on behalf of the commission, we need to talk with one voice, and therefore we each need to know who's talking to whom.
I think,
Or
I
we're
think,
gonna double, we're gonna look like fools at the end of the day.
I think folks, no, I think folks speak to the relationships they have, but the common voice is gonna come out of whatever it is, the letter is. So no one speaks outside of the scope of what the request is. But I think people.
But I think we all need to know who we're speaking to. Anyway, that's just one person's opinion.
If we can, and if no further comments on section 3, so section A, we can go to B, status update, budget cuts pay.
But I just wanted to give you an update on the pay. We had accrued some savings by not filling 2 of the vacancies that we have. One was the Director of Human Resources, and the other one was an analyst on the audit side. The analyst left on July 1st, and the vacancy accrued for the HR director in or about April this year. That's the money that they took, the money that had accrued on those.
So they called back what you essentially thought was going to be savings.
Are they asking for more money?
They haven't so far, and they understand that we're lean, and the letter I had written to OMB essentially asked for an exemption from the PEG. We didn't get an exemption, but they just took that money.
Do you have the ability to hire HR?
We are trying to, we can, speak about that after, but we have a plan.
Any other comments on the?
Do we as a small agency can create memorandum of understandings with other agencies that could fulfill those roles? Like,
Like an HR role, like a shared services kind.
I know, because in my case, the agency that I lead is the bridge authority. And we have a memorandum of understanding with Thruway that they have specialized everything. When I have a legal counsel, they have 10. Where we have an HR person, they have, so whenever something comes up, they are fantastic. They help us out with whatever we need. We call and somebody will help us with those needs. And So it has been very useful to us. I don't know what they say about us, but to us, it's been great because we are like a tiny speck in the transportation world, while they are a humongous organization.
So
So,
we do have a little bit of that going on.
okay,
And originally, when this agency was formed, it was part of DCAS.
okay,
DCAS handled all of the HR
okay,
for the agency. Then we obtained our own HR person. But DCAS still does some of the work.
okay.
They do some things.
So can you, like, now that you don't have those roles, expand on those relationships and make it a, well, you're gonna do our own HR. Thank you so much. I don't know if it's doable.
I understand what you're saying. I get a vibe of like, tiny agencies of the government unite,
Yeah.
Given,
It's not a mentorship relationship.
but given kind of like, this is where kind of our auditing, compliance, independent role comes into play. Where they
Ah,
kind
okay.
of conflict.
Yes,
You don't
When the
want
tiny
somebody else doing
agencies
it.
in the world unite.
yeah,
And this is where the education that uh, the general counsel, Jennifer Shaw provided, I think in the last EEPC meeting around the previous executive director, how she was really focused on kind of like building the EPC's independent capacity around like HR, around technology, around, so, you know, which we all like kind of like are beneficiaries of that focus that the former executive director had. So I can, and looking back on how there's symptom points around data and different things, right? I can see the importance of kind of like trying to have as much as we can to have our own independent infrastructure. But it does require resources.
Yeah.
It's stuff like that. We always go back to. Any other comments on topic with the budget cuts? Okay. Next, we go to the new business subsection, section 4. We have the 2023 commission meeting calendar. Everybody has that calendar? It looks like we're not meeting in February. We're not meeting in May or September. I know in the past, I think commissioners have said maybe a meeting in September and not one in August.
yeah,
Just going
That makes much more sense.
yeah.
just based on what I've heard in the past. So if that's the case, maybe this is the time to kind of raise that adjustment.
And it looks like the meeting times are different from
Oh, yeah.
10:30 to 9:30.
Oh, yeah, great point. Yeah, I cannot make it 9:30. I drop my kids off at school in the morning and it's just gonna be really difficult to get down here by 9:30.
So what, to 10?
10, 10 gives me like undue stress. 10:30 might be, for those who take public transportation. 10:30 might be. Was there a reason why the stand 10:30 was changed?
So historically, the meetings have been held at 9:30 for years and years and years. For the purpose of understanding that commissioners have other responsibilities outside of this agency, so to have a meeting that takes up the middle of their day was sometimes problematic in getting a quorum. So we would hold it as early in the day as we possibly could, which hence the 9:30.
I mean, look,
Historically, that's why it's been done, but if it's not set in stone, it's at the discretion of the.
I mean, I could make it at 10. I don't want to make it seem like it's just, I am dependent on. I could feel that, but 10:30 really makes it so that I am here, but
10 o'clock.
if you guys feel 10.
10. Is that, does that work? But
I feel like the chair is saying 10 could be a challenge for him.
okay,
But I just want to make sure we're all hearing what we're hearing.
yeah.
So maybe it's 10, then we could leave it at.
But no, but but it may be time, but I don't want to, 10 makes sense. But for the group, then it makes sense for all of us. I just have. So-
All right, 9:30 doesn't work.
Do you have a? Right, that's
10
good.
o'clock, we could make it 10:15. How about we slice the baby in half? 10:15,
It's fine.
Okay,
10:15, going.
great, we've got consensus.
Question, do we still have a December meeting?
There's a December meeting, yes, on the calendar for this, for next
Is
month.
that, what time is that one? 10:30.
10:30.
Are we having our Christmas party for staff thereafter?
It has not been discussed.
Do we have a Christmas party for staff thereafter and thank them very much for their hard work?
Absolutely.
So we
The end of the
putting
year, thank you
September and
party.
taking the August?
Excuse me?
Are we putting the September and taking the August?
Yes, we're taking August 24th off.
All right.
Yeah, that's good.
You're on notice. What is the date of our December meeting?
15th.
The 15th.
December 16th?
15th.
Oh, but
15th
it's the December 21st.
No.
We're talking about
Is it
month.
next?
Next year, okay.
Yeah,
Isn't
It's
this
here.
too late, the December
Okay.
21st?
21st, no.
Guys, can you
No.
stick around a little bit so we toast the staff?
Yeah, which day?
December.
Just
Michael sent a
15.
bunch of holds. Oh, that's not.
You said 13th?
I think the 15th.
21st is late. Because
Wait.
I normally travel.
We're talking about for next year, for 2020.
For next year.
So the reason we do we pick the 21st for next year is because we're trying to get as many resolutions passed in the calendar year as possible. So the longer we push it out, the easier it is for us to build up those numbers for our audit purposes. So we can pass more resolutions if we have a meeting on the 21st than on the 15th. That whole week of
Put it
work.
back to the 15th because you're in the middle of
Yeah,
Christmas.
Right, like this year I'm leaving on the
December
21st, so
15th.
next year.
I'm telling you
Back to
why
the
it was
15th.
done that way as opposed
Back to the
to.
15th.
I agree.
Well, no, it was never the 15th. It was the 15th of this year. I don't know.
Okay, okay, so query, for December, like recognizing that there's different objectives. Is it possible that the December meeting, it's okay, if it's not, could be on a different day, but earlier? So like if it's the 21st, a week before would be the 14th, could it be on another day between the 14th and the 21st? So it wouldn't be the Thursday, but it would, I think, capture what you want.
You want to do the following Tuesday, but that's closer to the 20th.
No,
That's what you want.
before. So like if the 21st is a Thursday, could we meet on the 19th, which is a Tuesday, just for December?
You guys can pick any day you'd like.
Yeah, we can.
You can pick
We
any
can.
time you want, and
Like
for the
that.
entire calendar, so really it's what works best for the board in getting us a quorum.
We can,
Trying
but
to
what I'm
meet
trying to, I'm trying to accommodate what you're saying is a need.
So put it on the 19th. That's the compromise number.
For December of 2023.
2023, the 19th.
Right.
The light bulb went out.
Oh,
It's nothing you did.
okay. No, I thought it was maybe like a motion, like
I
we
just
need
wanna
to move
say,
around.
You did not send an evil.
No, I don't send evil spirits.
We don't come back here.
We just didn't pay the bill.
Oh, well.
Budget cut.
Call Aaron.
So we're good with the meeting calendar?
So just to confirm, 10:15 for all of the 2023 meetings.
Yes.
We're gonna change the August to a September date to be determined. The December 21st meeting is being changed to the 19th.
Right.
And we are still having our 2022 final meeting on December 15th. Afterwards, if we want to have an end of the year thank you celebration, we won't do it then. Is that correct? I want to make sure I capture.
I am not, I like the fact that you made it not religious. It is not a
It is
Christmas
not a
party.
Christmas party. It is an
not a
end of the
Christmas
year
party.
thank
It's
you
the end of the
celebration.
year celebration,
It is.
a thank you celebration.
Fully captured.
And I will not dress as Santa Claus.
Next order of business, we have the letter to the city council regarding the inclusion of women in local law 13.
I love it.
Not much to say about that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's okay that.
I move to approve the letter.
Say,
All in favor? Opposed, abstentions, hearing none, motion passes. Next, we have the memorandum of understanding with DCAS.
So I kind of mentioned that earlier, that we have had discussions to enter into a memorandum of understanding with DCAS for data. And I'll keep you posted as we go get further.
Next, we have section 10, proposal to draft op-ed.
So,
You want me to get context for this? So, and this is echoing what I've said for several months now in terms of, once we do all the research that we do, once we have clear recommendations and findings, in a city as big as New York City, and workforce as big as New York City, you know, to get things out and known requires multiple channels. And one is op-ed. So I like to do op-ed so that at least punctuating 2 or 3 findings from the study or who we are. I think it's an important way to really elevate the work and elevate what it is we're trying to communicate. And I think in your package, there was an example put forward by the EPC executive staff of like some of the content that might be included in it. And this will be like an ongoing thing, quarterly, so.
After that.
But
No, I haven't.
is to give people a general sense of what the EPC is, what's been accomplished, what kind of studies have been conducted, what kind of recommendations we'd like people to know what's top of mind. So that's what we have here.
Where would you think this would appear?
Great question. I think, nothing more than 500 words, probably like in the Daily News, City and State, maybe the city's newspaper called The Chief, which is for the civil service, letting them know we're working, DEI issues for the workforce. So issues like newspapers like that or chronicles like that.
I have a additional idea operating on the same concept. New York Law School does its interviews with commissioners. They did one with new corp counsel, the female who's now heading up corp counsel, first time ever that a female is in charge of corporation counsel. I believe they are doing it with Adonis Rodriguez from the Department of Transportation. The head of New York Law School, Anthony Crowell, and Ross Sandler, who used to be the head of Department of Transportation, put these through on Friday mornings. I think I've sent some of them through alternates to when they've had people that are of interest. If we want the EEPC to be known because the attendees tend to be people within the city. And one of the pieces, I think, in my opinion, not a fact that I know, but I think we're unknown even within the city as to what we do. And therefore unknown as to what we have done and what our reports are. They're heavy written things. They're not articulated. The op-ed is attempt to articulate facts. This would be a way of making presentation of who we are to a group that was probably more interested in who we are than the body politic themselves, but city employees. I would suggest that we reach out to Ross Sandler and Anthony Crowell and see whether or not there's an open date where you could appear and talk about with Jean the undertakings and what we have done, talk about local law 13, which I suspect not a lot of people know, and not a lot of people know about our reports. And not while HR people within the city and EEOC people within the city know that we audit, and some commissioners may know that we audited them, but no one knows that this is an undertaking that we do annually, that the results are available in our annual report, and it's something they can look to. They can even check their own agencies, even if in our annual report, even if they never have had the ability to do so or access to it or understanding that they could. So I'm not sure an op-ed's nice, but I think doing this would do further to advance the knowledge of who we are.
I mean, I don't think any outlet is, it should be exempted, but I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chair Bonilla, that your goal is to also get us out in the public so that the public also has more of an understanding of what we do and that we exist. Because I know a lot of people who I know don't really have a clear understanding of what the commission does. And I think we do valuable work, so.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then on the second track, the conversation that I had with the executive team, we were discussing the op-ed and the greater need. And the op-ed signals is that I would like it, the commissioners definitely need your ideas on this, but I would like the executive team to be more forward facing in terms of like whether presenting at conferences, whether meeting other colleagues in the DEI space. I know there was a huge DEI conference 2 weeks ago with Jennifer Jones Austin and the mayor's people. All that. We were invited, none of us were there.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, right. So like there's places where we should be that were overlooked and not. And, you know, I really, part of that is, the intentionality of putting the list of 2 or 3 conferences, 2 or 3 people that you like to get in their face every month, every other month. So in addition to the work that the commissioners will be doing to, promote the research and the work and the agenda, I've asked the executive team to look at and recommend to us, what are conferences that they would be interested in presenting at, what are professional development opportunities, what are networks that they should be invited to, things like that. So because I think it's all related to what, right? And it ultimately actually is related to the conversation we've been having about funding.
Because if people don't know what you do, then they
They're not
they
gonna
can
give
put
you money.
value. Exactly.
Right.
Okay.
They don't see value.
Any other?
No, I think this is a great idea and a good first step. I don't know how active we are on social. I mean, I even posted, on my LinkedIn that I'm now a commissioner, so that, just to raise awareness of what we do. Maybe perhaps we can share links to the report. From looking at our budget, I don't know that we can afford to necessarily print, as many as we would like to distribute. But at least, we can post on our social media. Is somebody responsible for that on the staff or?
Sorry, there's social media?
I don't think there is.
I know that there's a LinkedIn, but
No, I don't.
no, okay.
No.
I think we have LinkedIn. We
I
have our
think we
YouTube
use
page, which
LinkedIn.
has our meetings.
Yes,
on
the
it.
YouTube, yep.
We've never really developed a social media presence. In part because of lack of resources, in part because the prior administration in the EEPC, I think, was more internal facing. Our job is to help city agencies behind the scenes, so the public doesn't need to know about us. There's not really that. So I don't think it was something that we really wanted to pursue.
Mhm.
Of course, if I'm wrong, please correct me.
Yeah, no, I think I've heard that before. Commissioner Reese, give me a second. I heard that before, but I liken this to the conflict of interest board. Like the conflict of interest board, you would think that their stuff is really internal when they give admonishment to other officials, they would have, but their social media platform is the most educative, informative, funny, to take a really difficult topic like corruption, and nepotism, and patronage and all that. But they really, really, without pulling punches, speak about their work, not kind of defaming anyone because they're lawyers, so they know, but at the same time, letting the public know about issues around conflicts of interest and corruption. Really, really nice job. So that would be like an example of a type when I think about what people think should be internal and you want to play nice in the sandbox. At the same time, you want to let people know that whether it's, in this case, DEI issue, it's kind of like a sheriff in town. It's about educating and compliance and things like that.
Well, and the other piece of it, just thinking about our last meeting, in the conversation we had quickly about the Racial Justice Commission, then you get into duplicative efforts because people don't know that there's an entity that already exists. It kind of does, and we're not doing the same thing, but we are kind of touching base, at least in the work and employment space. We are kind of I don't want to say the racial justice, but people don't know that we're here. They don't know what we do. So I think it would be a little helpful, and we don't have to do social media 24/7, but just here's our annual report on the state of employment in the city and equal access. So
That was going to be my point, which is we have the annual report. It's already written. There's no reason you couldn't translate it and make it more public. It's quote there, but it's not distilled down into what, for want of a better term, the social media space. there's no reason why you couldn't distill it and release it. It's a public report. It says what you've done. It talks about your audit and it talks about why you audit. And that piece is there and there's no, it's already done. It's already done.
Now, you know, some of this again, as you start putting together the labor economy, that's in a different, this is like a position, not a position, you know, so we are mindful.
Yeah.
So-
That's why I said it does not too much, but even if we just put the report, we'll start with just the report, but we don't, since we don't have a person, just, I don't wanna add, and I can assist, or I don't know what the rules are around access to social media for commissioners, but if I can help it.
I don't think that's a good point. We got a social media platform.
Yeah. Do a little something on the social, so I'll support and assist and I try. And share your program as on socials.
Oh,
Yes.
nobody invited me.
I'll invite you.
The next topic is the proposed EEPC charter changes.
Yeah, I put this item on the agenda because I wanted to talk about specifically two issues. We've talked about making changes to our charter a lot. And we've made some proposals to city council where we said we wanted to talk about enforcement provisions and also funding provisions. So but I wanted to point out that if right now, if you look at our final determination letters, we do include a paragraph within the letter at the end where if you look at the compliance monitoring period section, we specifically state that if an agency is unable to rectify all areas of noncompliance in its EEO program within the assigned compliance monitoring period, the agency head may be required to appear before the EEPC board during its next public meeting to explain why the agency was unable to fully implement all assigned corrective actions. And then it goes on to say that the EEPC may also issue a determination of noncompliance or determination of partial compliance and add the agency to next year's audit plan for a follow-up audit. I just wanted to point out that, we've included that language there, which hopefully we don't have to use, but we have it there if we have to use it. The other thing I wanted to
Not much of a penalty.
it's not a penalty, but if we're going to be amending the charter to talk about the comparable worth analysis and then I'd like to be able to say, well, we had all these other things on the table as well.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to kind of be clear, if we do want to include some enforcement provisions, what those provisions might look like, what we would all feel comfortable with going forward in terms of enforcement.
Part of what we played around with was putting on hold on an agency being able to hire anyone until they were in compliance, which is pretty drastic,
Yeah.
but would probably make for compliance. And it really has to do with if you're not a fair employer, which after all is what our employment practice is saying. And therefore, why should you be able to hire at whatever title, at whatever level into your workplace if they're not following the rules?
Do we have that authority?
No, that's the authority we would be asking for.
Okay.
And so, because we really have no enforcement authority, which is part of the reason, and it was raised, I sent an email back to Jean saying, I'm really disturbed by the number of community boards that 4 years later, once more were out of compliance. How difficult is it, once you've been in compliance, to complete that compliance? And then we go back in, and 4 years later, auditing the same entity, they're out of compliance again. Well, because it doesn't mean anything, because we have no power. Because it isn't even if we had public power to publicly say you aren't following the rules. We need to have something that represents a power. The fact that if you're not in compliance, you can't hire for the next 6 months or until you're in compliance, whichever comes first. That gives you some power. Anyway,
Commissioner,
one thought.
You know what might be good, and because particularly with community boards, there might be some turnover in staffing. So people, in terms of going back in the records. So I see this down here as under new business is training of community board members, but maybe when new staff come on, we train them as well, because they usually have a pretty small staff, and just say, oh, and when you're hired, you just gotta do a 1 or 2 hour, EEO training, something like that, so that they're familiar with the requirements. I don't know if the staffing turnover was the issue. Is that what we saw, or was it the same
No.
staff people and then they just got compliant?
I think, and I'll let you go, Jen, I'm sorry. I think that with the community boards, I too, raised my eyebrows at the number of corrective actions that were coming through. I think the problem is that they may not be providing all of the information when we request it. And then we say, okay, you've got X number of corrective actions. And then we give them a period of time between the time we issue the preliminary determination and the final determination to get whatever it is they need to get in to reduce the number of corrective actions. So I've been watching the corrective actions go from like 11 to 3 or like 17 to 5, so they are going down. But initially, for whatever reason, they're not getting the information in. And Jen, I'll turn it over to you then.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it's been my experience for the 4 years that I've been here that the preliminary determination is really not necessarily an accurate reflection of what the practices are. It's a reflection of what information they've provided to us about those practices. And I think sometimes it takes, and we have to keep ourselves on deadlines because we have our own mandates. So we can't allow them, give them 4 or 5 months to give us information. We set a 3-week period, we let them know it's coming, we tell them what they need to give us. If they want to provide stuff after, we've generally been lenient about accepting it before, as long as our determination hasn't been made yet. But I think a lot of times agencies get that preliminary determination and see the ramifications of not providing us information. And it leads them to then turn around and provide us with the things that they had already been doing. They just didn't give us documentation of it. And the actual final is, I think, more reflective of the state of their EEO program. And there are still some, even like community boards where it may not be, the final may not be reflection because they still just haven't gotten us documents. Some agencies, especially the smaller ones, they wait until like the very last second before we're gonna give you a determination of non-compliance if you don't give us our stuff and show us that you're doing it. Because we're doing it. You have to demonstrate us. You can't, if you had a financial auditor, you can just be like, I'm not cheating on my taxes. No, you have to demonstrate your information. So that's kind of where we've hit. So I think I'm not as concerned about the preliminary determinations because I don't necessarily think they're always an accurate representation of the program. It's when we go into compliance monitoring, the number of corrective actions we have during that period of time, I think is more indicative of what is actually happening at the agencies. Not always, but I think it's more reflective.
Pointed question. Are you concerned at all about the Bronx community boards and compliance?
I am not actually. I'm not. I think that for the most part, Bronx community boards have been receptive to our direction, and the Bronx Borough President is also being audited by us, and they're wrapping up their audit. So a lot of the documentation is fresh and new because the Bronx Borough President put it out. So now that's trickling down to the community boards. I think in terms of our audit, I'm not really that concerned about them putting things in place prior to the end of their compliance monitoring, which is only a month long. We don't give a long period of time for community boards because they don't have a lot of standards.
So just to continue, there were 2 issues. One was enforcement, the other one was funding. And we've been asking that our funding be some percentage of the funding of another agency. What I'm saying at this point is maybe we should just say, approve our staffing plan. We need a labor economist. We need some more workers to do the work. And we'll need a number of people. And along with that number of people, we have overhead. And I need the money for the overhead and training that they're gonna need to get up to speed. And that's it. Like, I don't know that anybody is going to entertain our budget being a function of somebody else's budget, but all I really need is the people and the costs to run the organization. That's all I need, and I can give them that number.
You can do both,
That goes back to.
Right, that's what I was.
but you can do both. You can offer a percentage, and in lieu of that, because that would be just automatic and you would not be beholden therefore to the vagaries, the political vagaries of even the mayor or city council. It would be a blunt percentage. But in lieu of that, this is our basic needs, and we need the following titles and the following X. If you don't want to change it so that it's automatic, then my current needs are X based on what you have mandated me to do.
I guess I'm unclear as.
The IBO is, the Independent Budget Office is done as a function of, I think, the controller's budget.
Thank you.
Right.
Just saying, thank you. You're welcome.
And that's the model we're looking at.
So whose budget would be the percentage of?
I can't
Who's
put,
got the biggest?
Good question.
I think we were looking at.
You know, we on YouTube.
I think, that's a great question.
I think.
If we're gonna say a percentage of an agency's budget, what agency?
I think we were looking at the controller. Act.
People were thinking different things, maybe the controllers, maybe,
Let me look at the
Picasso's
numbers.
citywide,
I like your.
the citywide units they have,
Pretty-
with the inclusion of percentage of hours, because it's some of the work. Yeah. But that's the question, that's the
Like,
great
cool,
question.
percentage of-
But short of that, I think giving them the explanation.
NYPD and DOE.
All right, all right.
It was like you on YouTube. Sonny.
CCRB's budget is tied as a percentage of NYPD.
But that makes.
Right.
But that makes sense for them. That makes sense.
I think we had originally said, the comptroller, because it's an oversight agency, because we are.
Was the
Oh.
controller. And it was because we were looking at another model and trying to model it. The core of the issue is we are, quote, independent.
Right.
That being said, as the Independent Budget Office is, that being said, our budget is beholden on the political vagaries between the mayor and the city council. And we were trying to find ourselves a model that would pull us out of that political sphere. That was where it started from. That's the history. You will note we have been unsuccessful.
So that's what we're asking now. That's what Jean is gonna request, that we're a percentage of the comptroller's budget or just.
Any
so we can get
alternative.
an
Or give us
idea of
this.
what- Give us what we need. Okay.
Does the controller's budget, I guess I'm trying to think about,
Like, who are they dependent on?
yeah, exactly, because I would think that like whoever, whatever the hiring, so in the same way that CCRB is connected to the police, so like what most affects our work, and like it could be like whatever, like whoever holds all of employment services for New York City, right?
Okay.
Because then the more people are hired, or the more whatever is expense, that means more work here. So just trying to figure out if there's like a correlation, something we can correlate it to, that the argument is that it's directly related to our work, whereas the comptroller is not really.
Except Ngozi, we have not only city employees, but we also have the district attorneys and we have the community colleges, both of which are in budgets that are somehow outside of those budgets. So I'm not trying to confuse things.
No, it's
I'm just
it's
trying-
information. So then all of those are then connected to the comptroller, so all of that money is under the.
The controller controls all the funding.
Yeah,
which was the reason for just trying to be tied to the money.
When you say the controller controls all the funding, what do you mean by that?
The taxes flow through and flow out, and then my
Okay.
question is, what does the
Because I mean, I'm just
controller
thinking,
do?
the council
What does the
sets the
controller
budget.
do to the district attorneys? And I think the district attorneys are getting money from the state. Community
Yeah,
colleges are
that's
getting, the community
That's good.
colleges are getting money from the city budget.
So let's
Oh, but the
do,
CUNYs are getting money from the state.
I got,
too.
wait, I got an idea.
Okay.
It's coming together. We get the point. It's coming. Okay, so what I'm thinking is, could we be a percentage of, since we are equal employment, could we possibly be a percentage of all of the personnel services for the city? Now, I'm not saying it has to be a huge, because that's a lot of money. But since we're responsible for equal employment, the percentage of all the agencies, so let's say all the agencies' personnel services come up to $1 billion. Maybe we are, and you tell me what you need, 10% of that. Because we.
Probably.
100 million, why not?
No, but to me, that's like a direct
that's what I-
correlation, right?
I think
Like,
that's what I
that's
was
a
trying to say.
correlation, that's a correlation.
What about
where-
the labor department? Do they have a big budget?
Personnel
that's
is
the-
personnel, decounts.
Personnel is the, yes.
Yes.
So for hiring and such like that, yeah. DCAS is the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. It used to be the Department of Personnel.
Right,
So they do all that, like citywide.
So that's probably the best time.
but then,
Yeah.
well, I was saying it like all the agencies, because we also have the DA's offices, which are under state, and then we have some other entities that are not under city. So it's, to me, it's like, well,
It won't be a perfect proxy, but it'll get us.
what is DCAS's
It'll get
budget?
us-
But they will allow you to go a percentage of?
No, it will require,
It's,
sorry,
we're
it's just. we-
Our wish list,
throwing something out, hoping
Yeah,
to get
our wish
something.
list, yeah.
We're just brainstorming
Okay, got
in
it.
terms of,
Ask for all the
but you
things.
have the percentage one and you have the, here's the budget. Here's the
Here's what we
personnel.
need to execute.
Next,
So that means staffing, OTTS, all that.
next we go. to
Gene, be creative.
Section G, audit symposium of the EO officers in January and February 2023. Oh, no, pardon me, I skipped over F.
Yeah.
Proposed commission bylaws. All right, so this is something that, I think 2 or 3 months into having been appointed to chair, I just asked for a copy of the bylaws to help me with some governance issues. But there are no bylaws. So, not that we need to have any, no comment on any previous or anything, there's reasons for everything, but I think it would be, beneficial, fruitful, and probably even by law, to have a kind of, to have bylaws, even if they're, not as fulsome. So I've asked, the executive director, the general counsel to start working on drafting like the bylaws and maybe a couple of commissions and things of that sort, but, and, they will have, or should I defer to you now to get?
Well, I actually, with Jean, I've drafted, a working draft. I wanted to have a copy of it to you before this meeting for your weigh-in and feedback. It probably will not be coming for another week or so because I'm still kind of adding and moving things and, but I do have a working draft and I think that we'll probably be able to get something officially done, probably by the beginning of the year.
Commissioner Reese?
Could I ask you what your subtitles are under your bylaws? So what are you trying to accomplish? Are you something about meeting rules and dates and then?
I've been looking at other bylaws. I've looked up, Robert's Rules of Order. I've been looking at a whole bunch of different things. I have something about our purpose, our membership in terms of the commissioners, what you're paid, who you are, what your roles are,
Open meetings law, right?
about meetings and what happens at meetings, about minutes and recording and structure of the EPC operations. It's not long because it's not, we don't need it to be something that's not readable, but there's many different parts. But again, like I said, I want to circulate amongst all the commissioners so that you can provide me with some feedback if you think that I'm missing something or something needs to be changed before it goes before like a formal review and vote.
And then it becomes public.
Any other comments on that? Next, we go to audit symposium for EO officers in January or February 2023.
I put this on the agenda because I wanted to put it out there that I want to have some sort of, I'm calling a symposium, but really an information session for EEO professionals, particularly targeting those agencies that will be audited by us in year 2 and 3, to advise them what we're looking for. I want to be very specific, what it is that we're going to be asking them to provide in the audit. And if you're not doing it, start doing it, because when we get there, we want this to run smoothly. So I'm looking at January, February timeframe after the holidays, just to put something on, invite all the officers and field any questions that they might have, because I really think that, 4 years is too long. And if we wait for 4 years and then we go back and they're not in compliance, it means they've been out of compliance for a while, and that's not good.
Commissioner Reese?
Can you tack on to that training? So if you're doing an audit symposium, let's assume, as you have, that there's been turnover. So let's tack on as part of it, training. And do we have the ability to give a piece of paper or a certificate to people who participated, so that we email something out that they can either do something with or not, but it really makes it appear to be more important than perhaps they might seem it to be. So your attendance gives you this certificate. We call it continuing legal education in the legal world, but we could call it something else within here, and maybe get DCAS to be one of the presenters.
Yeah.
So that you build on it and make it more important than just bringing you up to date as to what we're going to ask, but it is an ability to help you with your skill set in dealing with EEO.
Great, so if we do training, which I think is a great idea, we do have to prepare a training manual. We'll have to.
But I would do it as part of this. So as complying with what we're looking for, we want to train you to be able to provide it to us. So that's coupled with both of that. And for those participants, we'll give you a certificate of participation.
And I think this goes back to also Commissioner Yearwood's idea of like training due to turnover. That's something that I'm very interested in, because they need to know, the new people need to know what to do when they get it.
And my assumption is you can film it and then resupply it for people who are coming on as well. So you may not have to do it again and again.
How long would it be?
How long would the actual training be?
Yeah.
I don't know, since we haven't really plotted it out, but we can update you at the next meeting.
And when you said a manual, I was like, oh, it sounds. Like, that seems 3 or 4 hours when you say manual, so.
No, you can do a manual in an hour. They really are doing, part of it is participation. So it's, a piece of it is having people answer yes or no question. And the number of people who say no when it should be yes. Maybe a way of doing it too.
Scenarios.
No further comments on this topic. We go to section H, public meetings, remote attendance.
So I just wanted to alert everybody that the state of emergency has been lifted with regard to the open public meetings law attendance requirements. So going forward, in-person meetings need to be held. If we want to allow remote participation, there's a whole rulemaking process that needs to be followed now. In a nutshell, obviously, there's much more detail to it, and if there's something that you want me to explore, I can. But in a nutshell, remote would be only applicable for extenuating circumstances and only after a quorum has been reached in person. So for our purposes, the most we would have ever participating remotely would be 2 commissioners, because 3 of you have to be here to have a quorum in
But it
person.
allows Commissioner Alcantar to be at her job.
There's a whole rulemaking
Yeah.
process. It's
the law.
yes.
Yeah.
It's in depth, so, and I've spoken to the law department about whether or not the city plans to put into place citywide rules for this kind of participation, and they have not. They did direct me, I think they said that they could find out a couple of agencies who may have already done this, so I might reach out to them if this is something you want me to explore. I don't know how much time or labor it will take to get this process rolling, but if it is something that the commissioners would like to have available, then I will look into it further.
On behalf of Commissioner Alcantar, I think we should try to find out whether there is some way that she can participate remotely for some of those meetings.
But it has to be extenuating circumstances.
So extenuating circumstances, she has a board meeting on that day.
Right.
Put that on.
But it wouldn't be like a regular,
Okay.
every single meeting,
No, I understand.
because then it subverts the open meeting
Okay.
act.
Thank you.
She can play chess.
Thank you, Elaine. I appreciate it.
Any other comments on it? Next, we have section I, training of community board members.
So I put this on the agenda as well because I wanted to at least update you on what's been going on with the issue of training for community board members. Yeah, I think Jen started off the whole process by working with DCAS, or meeting with DCAS to is to come up with some parameters, I guess, for the training, to see, I guess, to see if there was some time that I want to speak for you.
Oh, yeah, no, well, we've had a few meetings. We had a meeting with DCAS Learning and Development to see the logistical aspects, because the community board members are not city employees. They don't have city IDs to be able to log in to do the citywide training. We spoke to DCAS OCEI to see if there was some sort of training tracking, because they track internally all city agencies for certain trainings that are required by law. We had a conversation with the Community Affairs Unit in the Office of the Mayor to determine what their participation is in coordinating it. I think distilled down, it really is a matter of, correct me if I'm wrong, I think our next step is probably to be reaching out to the borough presidents, because it's kind of been established that the borough presidents are probably going to be the group responsible for overseeing this kind of training, coordinating this kind of training. And, the CAU said that they might be able to help coordinate. There's also the CEC, which is the Civic Engagement Commission. And part of their, I guess their mandate is to train community board members, but the parameters of that training is very broad and it's not really driven, but there might be a way for us to work with them to see if maybe they can help coordinate using that authority. I don't know. We're still kind of figuring it all out.
Will that be training the leadership or training everyone?
Training the entire board, who are all unpaid.
Okay.
Volunteers who
That's
come from community organizations and are there because of the political needs of the particular borough president in that location. For being careful as to how I speak.
But I mean, I do think it's, as a veteran of a borough president's office, I think that it's a good idea, because even though they're unpaid, they are representative bodies
Absolutely.
of the communities that they serve. So and the borough president, I would say, would have, the power to say, listen, to partner and do the training.
We've learned, I'm sorry.
I have a question. Can we do it in writing? In other words, could you put together, rather than a training manual, could we put together a questionnaire covering the questions. So a definition of sexual harassment, a definition of discrimination, a definition of, I mean, go all the way down, a multiple choice. And have a requirement that any proposed member of the community board or current member fill this out in order to be on the community board. And then we look at these writings to see if there is an understanding of what the rules are.
So,
Go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna give
No,
you feedback as to what we've already kind
Yeah,
of
go ahead, Jennifer.
fleshed out. There was a suggestion made that perhaps we can work with the borough presidents to update the community board member application.
Right.
That in accepting this role, you also agree to participate in this training or that training.
Yes.
Most likely general EEO training, and then potentially like for the hiring committee folks, hiring structured interview training, and then sexual harassment prevention, because that's a yearly requirement of the cities. So that was something that we would want to explore as well, but we have to really kind of get in touch with the community board, the borough president's offices to kind of work this out, because it's probably gonna fall a lot on them. But when we had our conversation with CAU, they were really helpful in telling us about the different meetings, that they have a meeting of all community board chairs, they have a meeting of all community board district managers. So that might be something that we could utilize as an opportunity for them to, start getting out this idea of this training. I think we can all agree that this training really should be done. It's a matter of how we're gonna execute it. Because we have limited resources too, and we don't necessarily have the authority to give directives, but I think if we can get buy-in from the people who can have that oversight, then we'll be
But if you
successful.
don't get it, the tie into the application, it's the tie into the application.
No, okay.
Oh,
So there's actually, so Commissioner Reese is talking about a written thing. There's actually a video that goes through the different topics, and then you have to like question and answer. And the reason I know that this video exists is because the city put it out to make sure that organizations are in compliance. And so my organization, we did that in lieu of something else. And so then that certifies for the city that you are qualified for the year, 2 years, or whatever it is. And so, I mean, since it already exists, could we just,
tie in.
yeah.
They never mentioned that to us.
That's-
I mean-
That's the link that I sent you.
Oh, was that the CCHR?
Yeah, because the city council passed a law that all private and nonprofit entities
Yeah.
take this second.
Yeah.
Sexual harassment training.
Just tie into that and put town slash John at the community board.
This.
CCHR.
I'll send you the link. So this, because the original obstacle was, now, community board members do work on behalf of the city, but they're volunteers and also the employees, and they don't have a employee identification number, which DCAS keeps track of to be able to then do their report. So then, but I think the New York City Commission on Human Rights has this training, anti-sexual harassment in the workplace. And some argue it's not comparable to DCAS one and quality or whatever, but I've taken it for the last 5-6 years. And I think I take it both. I think it both, and I think it'll be fine.
I think that's what DCAS had told us, that when we brought this up, they were like, well, it doesn't satisfy our requirements.
Having no training.
Right.
I agree. I agree.
That's a good
I
idea.
agree.
This allows you to print out a certificate of completion.
Correct, yeah.
Which is something that we
So you already, I was gonna look for it, but you've already sent
Yeah,
that.
no,
Okay,
we're
okay.
aware of that training. It just wasn't something that, like DCAS wouldn't be providing that training,
Right, right,
because
right.
they have their own and,
Be from us.
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, it's
We
the
could say-
Commission on Human Rights, right? So it's another city agency.
Yeah, so we could say, this is our training. We all walk through it, talk through the things, pop quiz every couple of pages or chapters, and then it's done.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm going through that now, like with jobs, they have you do that, like,
Yeah, yeah.
you need to do all these trainings. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, so. That is our solution,
But it's part of the application process.
yes.
Tied back in. You
Right.
can't serve.
So from jump,
Well, not,
And
so is
also-
it application or is it when they're appointed? Because they also are supposed to do some training, I think, after they're appointed.
Correct.
So it's an application or appointment. So
So this would be tied into the application and, when we met
It
with,
can't be considered unless you've done this
okay, so then that's application.
application. And it seems to me that that's where it should be.
when we met with the community affairs, we had pretty good support of them.
The application.
Updating the application.
Great.
I have to say that was Mike's idea.
That'll be an area that, and Commissioner Hill would know, so, being in this area a lot. I mean, that would be like kind of huge itself, right? Having 2,950 volunteers doing work on behalf of the city to undergo this training, hopefully gain some awareness and
Mhm.
behavioral attitude change around that could,
And
change
these
some
are
of the.
community leaders.
And you know
Change
who
the-
the EEPC is.
Mhm.
Well, it's another way of getting your name out there.
That's right.
So,
I like it.
anything else on this? No? Next, we go to section 5, audit update, status of the employment practices audit.
I'll be quick. We are continuing to work along. We've sent out 22 of our preliminary determinations. We still have about approximately 12 left, but they're all in draft form at this point, so I anticipate them all going out. I anticipate us getting all of our final determinations out before the end of the year, which would make us be able to meet our comptroller mandate. In terms of compliance resolutions, we're a little behind on that, but I think that what's gonna happen is come January, February, the rollover from this year is gonna be heavy, and then we're gonna have next year's work as well. So we're moving along. It's taking longer than it usually does, but again, that's because we also got our late start and we had to set up this whole entire audit and all of the parts of the audit, and we have, we're working 2 of our analysts, this is their first time doing audits, so they're kind of on a learning curve. So we're gonna get there. It's just not going to be as quickly as we usually are this year, but I think next year we'll catch up and it'll be fine.
Next, we go to section B, 2022 final determination resolutions. We have 8 votes. I'd like to proceed in this way unless there's any objections. If there's no commissioner that is recusing themselves for any one of the 8 votes for conflict of interest or otherwise, and the directionality of the yay votes are all in the same direction, I'd like to bundle all 8 resolutions into one and vote on them as a bundle. There's no objections. All right. So would you like to say anything, Jennifer, on the 8 resolutions, or?
Just that these are the entities that are entering into compliance monitoring, and their compliance monitoring period ends usually by the end of this year, beginning of next year, and hopefully we'll be able to get them wrapped up sooner rather than later. So no, that's really the extent of that.
I move that we approve all 8 in total.
I second.
So we have a motion, we have a second. In minutes, you could just outline, which were the agencies. So all in favor to approve 1 through 8 resolutions of final determination, say
Aye.
any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. Next, we have section C, status of community board employment practices audit.
This is kind of just piggybacking on what I was just speaking about. We are doing the Bronx community boards and the Staten Island community boards. 12 out of 15 preliminaries have been sent out. We are getting the rest of the FDs out. I anticipate them all being done before the next board meeting or shortly thereafter. And we are finding that the Bronx community boards have been very cooperative. They want to be in compliance. They want to know what they need to do. So that is moving along, and I'm confident that we'll get that wrapped up with minimal.
Jean, going back to the earlier commissioner's question, has there been EO turnover at the Bronx?
For some, yes. Yeah, there has been. I know one agency doesn't have a district manager right now. And that's who we're kind of aiming all of these directives to. Some of the chairs are the same. There's been movement, definitely movement. And I think a lot of it has to do with COVID. I know that in Staten Island, one of the district managers passed away, and he had been with the Staten Island, district office for many, many years. So,
And really, it's the district managers that deal with the staffing. The
Right.
board does the hiring, so.
And one of the district managers, you may
I
not be aware of,
follow up. So that was part of
that you've been working closely with, has just been appointed city clerk. So they're no longer the district manager.
oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. Aisha Brown.
Oh, she's been
She's been very helpful with you, but now she's a city clerk of the books.
oh, wow.
Stipend courts.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to follow up with her community associate or maybe her chair will step in and
She's
the
there
interim.
until the end of this year.
I didn't know she didn't. Yeah.
Next, we have status for follow-up sexual harassment prevention practices order.
This one's very quick as well. We are doing one follow-up. We've initiated it. We've had the pics sent out. All of the documents have been sent and our senior analyst is drafting the preliminary determination as we speak. And I hope to have something for you by the next meeting. They only have 6 corrective actions and they've had a year to get their program in order. So we're hoping that it will be successful. That's what we're doing. That's what we want ultimately. And the reason they didn't make compliance last year is because they've had a new person and with the COVID turnover and just there was a lot happening. So they just couldn't put into place the programs that they needed to in the 6 months that we gave them. So.
Commissioner Reese.
Back to the discussion of the quote op-ed or talking about it, is there some way of spinning with the annual report how work went on during COVID and how we met our numbers even during COVID and how the city was responsive even during COVID and how there has not been a deterioration of looking at equality for hiring even during COVID? I mean, there's some way of spinning it affirmatively.
Yes.
In section 6 now, research update, subsection A, 2022 CUNY Community College report.
Just to let you know, you'll have a draft before the next board meeting to review. It's in progress.
Subsection B, comparable worth analysis.
The only thing I want to say here is, in response to the earlier conversation, right, that, there's concerns about capacity, there's concerns about coordination and buy-in from the other agencies, there's concerns about expertise. I'm not as worried about, our ability to do the work in terms of the expertise or learning the field. It's a complicated field, right? We would definitely need more resources, but I would just say that even just in the last month when we first learned that this was being proposed and trying to study and learn how other, the state does this or how other private organizations do this, that I am highly confident with additional resources, if we got those, which I know is a big if, that we could do something along what the city is asking. And I think that we have a lot of experience on our team in terms of people that have been working with the city for 6 or more years and that they know the titles and the job groups and the civil service system and all of that. And so my only hesitation on it is the capacity and is not only getting coordination with the other agencies in terms of the data and all that, but the buy-in that would come with that. Because if we come up with a system that's evaluating people's jobs, it's not this, we can't just sit in a room and do it. We need to be able to coordinate and collaborate with these other agencies. So even if they don't agree with the final outcome, at least they know what the process was and sort of how it was. And so just saying that in terms of whether this is something we feel we can or cannot do, I'm worried about staff and I'm worried about sort of collaborating with the other agencies. I'm not worried that our team couldn't do this and couldn't learn and do it well.
Commissioner Yearwood, Commissioner Reese.
So right now we have the 3 racial justice proposals, and every time I hear about the one regarding the true cost of living, is there any synergy between this comparable worth analysis and finding this true cost of living for NYC? And if there's any synergy there, if it passes, do you think that that might be something we can kind of tap onto to kind of get this accomplished?
I don't know enough about I mean, I know of the
ballot
resolution of the
proposal,
ballot
yeah.
proposal. I don't know enough about it to speak to that in terms of what any tie-in could be.
I think it's separate in the sense that the true cost of living, if adopted, the closest proxy to a true cost of living is the self-sufficiency standard index.
Yes.
And in relation to what municipal employees are paid, in relation to salaries, and what the self-sufficiency standard currently says it takes to live in New York City, it really is gonna point out that city employees are like way underpaid to be able to afford rent, childcare, transportation, food, clothing.
Yeah.
So that's, maybe one area, but I can get you the information.
No, please. I would certainly want it to be, and to the extent that we can, yes, absolutely, but I just don't know enough to really.
But the one through line that I see with both, and that we've spoken about here, that cannot be overstated enough is how expensive, how prohibitive, and what challenge and a barrier childcare is.
Mm.
And if we have pay disparities that's gendered, which our last report has demonstrated, and if the self-sufficiency standard of the true cost of living in New York City has childcare taking up an exorbitant amount of percentage of people's budgets, almost comparable to even like rent in many ways,
Yeah.
then it really exacerbates this, the overall challenges that are the female workforce, the women workforce in New York City is going above and beyond what kind of our reports even just show. Commissioner Reese?
I have a different set of questions going in a different place, and that is when you look at comparable work analysis. So is a lawyer a lawyer a lawyer, and is an engineer an engineer an engineer? And I'm not making fun, but if I'm in the law department and I'm doing litigation, is that the same thing as being the general counsel within the EEPC?
No.
And is that the same? So so to the extent we're talking about comparable work and looking at this, even though the titles may be the same, the
Right.
skill set differs. And how do you find out what the skill sets are in each of the separate agencies? So the general counsel for the police department and the litigation counsel for the police department may be totally different than the general counsel for HHC. I just, how are we going to make some sort of determination as to what the pay scale should be? Because that's what comparable work is trying to get to.
Right.
Isn't a piece of it subjective?
Of course. So is everything.
So
I mean,
who's going to do that evaluation under what criteria?
So I read the law as it's drafted differently than maybe others have, where I don't know that it requires us to look at every title every year. Maybe you could interpret it as saying that. I don't. If that's what we had to do, if we had to go to every agency and do every individual title and every lawyer and we even with 8 or 10 new staff, we could never do
You
that,
could-
frankly. We couldn't do that.
So is there an understanding, a definition that will help us?
Well, so the way that these things work, I mean, there's lots of different ways that they work but they work through a combination of, you do surveys, you do text analyses of existing job descriptions, you do focus groups, there could be observations that are done of what people are doing, and you develop a metric where you determine all of the things that go into this work. What is the educational requirements? How much mental capacity? What are the physical demands of the job? What is the environment that they work on? And so I can't say that every general counsel across the city would agree with whatever final determination was made. But at the beginning, you've developed a survey that is done to say, these are the questions we're asking you about your job, or the
You
supervisor.
spend 50% of your time doing X and 20%.
Kind of like that. And then you then say, this is the rubric of how we're going to score it. We weight education this much. We weight the physical demands of the job this much. We weight the mental demands of the job this much, the environmental, all of that. And that's why I said earlier that what's really important even more so than the expertise, which is very important. We would need not only a labor economist, but if we were to hire new people, HR specialists that really know the field very well. That the buy-in comes in, so at the very least, you allow people to collaborate and offer input on, these are the things that I think need to be valued, these are the weights that I think. And it's gonna be like a good compromise, right? Nobody's gonna be happy with the final result, everybody just goes kind of accepts what's there, but that's the process. And I think that what's particularly challenging about what the city wants is, if you read a lot of the work that's done in this, it's very rarely that you would create the same tool that could analyze a sanitation worker and analyze a lawyer. That's a hard thing to do. And some people that do this work professionally say, don't even try, actually. Maybe I'm naive and idealistic. I think something could be done along the lines of what the city wants. The redlining process, to the points that you were making, would have to be very specific, that, and if it's not clear in the legislation, we can't do every job every year. That's just not going to happen. It would have to allow us some flexibility in terms of which agencies and which titles and such.
Well, what comes to mind is the lament in the fire department is that the women are at the EMS. And the fire people who are earning more salary are the fire people,
Right.
people dealing with it. And yet they're all within the fire department. And what is the comparable worth of this officer who's going to save your life, EMS, because you're having a heart attack, versus the officer that's going to save your life because your building's burning down?
Right.
In truth, both of them are saving your life. Both of them, each of them are at risk in some manner
Right.
because of the exposure to a life-threatening problem. And yet there's a discrepancy in pay, and the females who are loaded here are not getting the comparable
Right.
pay to the firemen or the fire people that are loaded here.
Right.
That, I believe, is what the legislation is looking at, because that's the lament. And I can't figure out how you do comparable worth for those two titles.
Right.
So when you,
And that's, I think, the problem.
when you narrow the focus like that, it's analogous to nurses working in different settings, and the pay disparity there, or guards, right? From guards in the schools to guards, different type of guards. I think, as this evolves, the unions will have key research outfits as well.
Yeah,
Will have to be around the table in
Yeah.
that regard,
for sure.
because this is,
But they're part of the problem, not the solution.
well, we're in public session, so. Something like that, but we definitely know that unions have a role to play, right? And in the role that they are playing, they can contribute research and input in this regard.
Oh, no, for sure. You need people representing the labor force. You need people representing a variety of city agencies. We probably still need to bring on a consultant, I think, to help develop things if this were to move forward, for sure.
But, I guess that's the sum is, that the EPC with proper funding, right, and resources can undertake this type of research, feels that this type of research is very well within its mission and complementary to some of our other reports. Yes.
But I think it goes back to the need to be very careful with the redlining, to be very careful with the definition and the undertaking, to be very careful with the understanding of what the request is on comparable, and really understand what we're talking about, and whether you need to go through every agency,
Yeah.
or whether it can be analytically done by selecting some annually and making it public. I mean, I think you have to be very careful in what the request is within the legislation, that it can be fulfilled, because otherwise we'll be not able to fulfill it and be held to a standard we can't meet.
That, Commissioner O'Connell?
So I'm just noticing, I don't know if the lights went out because we're over time,
Yeah.
but we're a little bit past. I just wanna,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm gonna keep us more. Employment Advisory Committee, we have the EEPC Commissioner attendance.
Right, and I wanted to bring that up because we put out a schedule of the advisory commission meetings from between now and the end of the fiscal year, which would be June 30th. And I just wanted to get a better understanding of which commissioners would be attending or how we were going to handle this or with attendance.
So if you want to attend, let her know.
Okay, I'll respond to the calendar invitation.
Is that what this is? I thought that's what you said.
No, that's what.
Now, what I'm confused about that, if three or more commissioners attend, that's good, that's considered.
You are, you need only one or two.
We start getting into that blurry line of public debate
Yeah.
about decisions that are gonna be made to affect the agency. I would recommend that there be two or one.
Okay.
Okay. At each.
So we can take that.
To respond and
Okay.
So we had one meeting, now I'm just segueing into we had one meeting and I put in, you all received a copy of the minutes, which were the actual minutes of what happened. I've spoken with the chair about it. The chair wasn't sure that that's the direction we want to go. I redacted some of the things, made it a little more general. And resubmitted it to you. And then the question is, do we want this posted? Oh, can you circulate, I'm sorry, I apologize for interrupting, can we just circulate the resolutions for signature, because I just realized that they're wrapping up. Right, nobody can leave, because we have a lot of sign. Yes, sorry.
Okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt, it just.
We're not doing commission trainings.
No.
Did we have, and my concern there was, and I think, I don't know if G mentioned this, Jennifer, but if we don't want more than two commissioners, because that's like a meeting, you know, a meeting essentially. But if we're going to be posting the minutes and taking stuff like that, that essentially that's an open meeting itself, because we're making whatever was deliberated public. In which case it doesn't matter if one commissioners. That's all.
Well, we would still have to do the same requirements of public, like notice of the meetings and allow the public to attend. I don't necessarily know if the minutes should be public.
I don't think they should, because I don't think the other members that attended from DCAS and others,
they don't want it to be.
they don't want to.
I
I took it more like, I think this more akin to like an interagency
Yes,
Thanks, yeah.
meeting.
it's meant to be interagency.
That, so I don't think we don't have to go to public. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Commissioner Reese, and have a second, Commissioner Garza, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing none, we are adjourned.
All right.